Welcome into Straight Up Sports. I am your host, Devin Albertson. On this show, I start off the week talking college football on Mondays, followed up with the NFL on Tuesdays. On Wednesdays, I dive into the world of Division II football. And finally, on Thursdays, I will tackle Missouri 8-man football. On Fridays, I will review what I talked about Monday through Thursday. Also want to make sure to ask you to follow Straight Up Sports on Twitter at show_straight and to follow my personal account at Devin Albertson. Straight Up Sports starts now. And welcome into this week's show. I am Devin Albertson for Missouri 8-man football edition of Straight Up Sports. Hope you guys are enjoying your week so far. I know I am. It is now Thursday, which means it's time for Missouri 8-man football. So excited for week 2. Week 1 was fun. A lot of good football being played. Week 2, scheduled a little bit lighter on some of the really good matchups, but still a couple good matchups out there that we're going to dive into just a little bit here. Before we start, I want to make sure you follow show_straight on Twitter for all the show's tweets. It's going to be just the shows, and then my Mo 8-man rankings, and maybe a couple things from shows that I've had that I'll share to my viewers, followers there. So make sure you guys follow that. Follow my personal account at Devin Albertson. And finally, follow Mo 8-man Football on Twitter for all your 8-man news. And keep those up at the bottom of the screen. Make sure you follow all of those. Very important there. But now we're just going to go right into the power rankings and kind of what all happened last week and everything that's going on there. As we're just going to do this real quick. In my power rankings, of course, Stanberry stays number 1, followed by Worth County, King City, Mountain City, Pattonsburg, Southwest Livingston, Rockport, North Andrew, East Atchison, South Holt, Nottoway Holt, rounding out the top 10. So, but I guess right before we get to all this, I want to thank the 16 teams who have posted their stats. This is Albany, Braemar, DeKalb, East Atchison, King City, Norbert Hardin Central, North Andrew, North Shelby, Northwest Hughesville, Northwest Nottoway, Platte Valley, Rockport, Stanberry, Southwest Livingston, Stewartsville, and Worth County. Thank you guys for posting your stats. Makes my job a little bit easier and kind of see where everybody's at the state. It makes it so much more fun to compare teams and stuff like that and just kind of get a grip on what's going on because you can't go to all games at one time. I wish the other 7 schools, Chilhowee, Mountain City, Oric, Osceola, South Holt, Nottoway Holt, and St. Joe Christian would post their stats. Also Pattonsburg. I wish they would post their stats so we get a little better grasp of what they're doing, but that's their deal. So let's go into the rankings now. Stanberry, they dominated Braemar in week 1. They ran for 193 yards and just 10 carries. That's insane. It's over 19 yards a carry there for the Bulldogs. Trey Schieber led the attack, had 148 yards and 2 touchdowns on just 5 carries. He's over like 29 yards a carry right now. Number 1 in the state is Trey Schieber. Ruben Gage added 3 carries for 33 yards and a touchdown. And the Bulldogs defense held Braemar to just 75 yards of offense. Very impressive by the Stanberry defense and their offensive attack, winning 42-2. They got Albany coming up next. Stanberry stays number 1 in my rankings. They haven't given me any reason to take them from number 1. Worth County only led 24-12 after the first quarter versus South Holt, Nottoway Holt, then dominated the second quarter, outscoring the Spartans 44-16. Added another touchdown right after halftime to end the game via mercy rule. Caleb Parman ran all over the Spartans defense in that 74-28 win. He had 15 carries for 171 yards and 3 touchdowns. Tigers defense also forced 5 turnovers, 4 of them being interceptions, and they blocked a punt as well. Worth County kind of showing that they're still one of the top teams in the state. 1-0. They got Bedford next from Iowa. That should be interesting to see how they do versus an Iowa school and kind of give them just a different opponent they haven't seen before, with still being a close trip, being only about 30-35 minutes away. That should be fun. One of the more interesting games of the week. 3, King City, 1-0 last week. They won at North Andrew, 40-8. I called the game for K&IM. They led from start to finish, North Andrew. Colin Breckenridge, he was really fun to watch. 17 for 25 passing for 206 yards, 4 touchdowns. Did have an interception. It did come on a 4th down and long where he kind of threw it up to the end zone. He also had 18 yards rushing and 1 touchdown on the ground. Breckenridge's favorite target was Kagan Barnett. He played really well. 11 catches for 129 yards and 3 touchdowns. A variety of things, whether catching screen passes or downfield passes. Barnett was really good there in that game versus North Andrew. Jacob Moen also had a really good game. 13 carries for 98 yards and a touchdown, as well as 3 catches for 45 yards, including a 35-yarder for a touchdown. Moen was really fun to watch there, run the ball for the Wildcats. But the one man who stood out for the Wildcat defense I want to give a quick mention to, Braden Gilbert. He had 15 tackles, including 2 tackles for loss. He was all over the field there playing from that outside linebacker position for the Wildcats. He was really fun to watch. He really stood out to me. King City, they have Northwest Hughesville coming up in their home opener here in Week 2. Now we'll get to those my picks later, but King City set up well to start the year 2-0. Number 4, Mountain City, they absolutely dominated Platte Valley, 58-0 win at halftime. They had Stewartsville this week. I will know a little more about where Mountain City stands after the Stewartsville game, after Stewartsville won their Week 1 matchup versus Northwest Nottoway, 50-0 at halftime. Kind of see where Mountain City and Stewartsville are at in comparison. I think Mountain City will win that game, but I just want to see where they kind of gauge with a little better competition in Week 2. Number 5, Pattonsburg. Last week, they won at St. Joe Christian, 68-22. They were up 44-6 after the first quarter. Just absolutely controlled that game from start to finish. I'm glad I ranked them ahead of Christian last week. When I first came out with my stuff, I thought, oh, Christian are usually a top 10 team. But I'm like, you know what, Pattonsburg, they did really well in the Jamboree at North Andrew. I decided to give them a nod at number 10. I'm glad I did to make me look a little better coming in this week. I have them jumping from 10 to 5 in this week's rankings because they were impressive, and all the teams that were above them in the previous rankings didn't do a whole lot for me. So I think they deserve that move from 10 to 5, kind of recalibrate where I need to have them. We'll know more about Pattonsburg and the Panthers after weeks 3 through 5. They have versus North Andrew, at King City, at Stanberry. That's when we'll know more about the Panthers and if they're legit state contenders or just a really good football team. They're somewhere in there. I think they're still a really good football team no matter what. We'll see what the Panthers are after a couple of weeks. After that, Southwest Livingston, big props to the Wildcats going on the road and being a top 10 team in the state. Mac Anderson led the charge for the Wildcats. On the ground, 23 carries for 193 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also went 10 of 14 passing for 213 yards, 3 TDs, and 1 interception through the air. He's a fantastic athlete for Southwest Livingston. I know he's getting some looks from basketball. He's 6'5" posts and go up there and slam it. He's a terrific athlete. Livingston has a good one there with him. Caleb Edens also did some damage through the air. Went 4 of 6 passing for 125 yards and 3 touchdowns as well. Livingston controlled the second half on the road, outscoring East Ashton 32-14 in the second half to come away with that 52-42 upset win last week. I had East Ashton winning that game. Livingston came in and proved me wrong. Congratulations to them. Right now, I view the Wildcats as the second best team in the 275. That can, of course, change over the next few weeks. It can change after this week when they play South Nottoway at home, who I have ranked number 10th in this rankings. Up next, another 275 conference team in Rockport. 1-0. They did beat DeKalb last week, 40-14, but I have them sliding down one spot in the rankings, mainly because I don't want to say anything bad about DeKalb, but they have not been a very solid team over the past couple of years. So when you have a lackluster opener like that, it's not going to look good in my eyes. I know they get the win. The win is the most important thing here, but I just was not impressed with seeing Rockport's final score there with 40-14. I think it was 16-6 at halftime. Just not what I wanted to see out of Rockport in Week 1. They had a 4-pronged rushing attack led by Joey Herron. He had 10 carries for 107 yards and a touchdown. Gavin Abbott added 7 carries for 47 yards and a couple of scores. Brock Martin, 12 carries, 44 yards and a touchdown. He also had 4 catches for 33 yards and another touchdown. Alex Burke, their quarterback, went 4 of 11 passing, 33 yards and that 1 touchdown, as I said, to Martin. He also had 13 carries for 15 yards and a touchdown on the ground. I just dropped him down because I was more impressed. I was more impressed with what Pattonsburg and Livingston did than, say, what Rockport didn't do. So it was more about what the other teams in the area did than more of a bang on Rockport. So that's kind of what I thought. I thought Pattonsburg and Livingston earned rises more than Rockport earned to stay there. That's kind of where I'm at with those. North Andrew, I'm sliding them down 4 spots here for losing to King City by 32 at home. King City probably should have won by more, but North Andrew was able to move the ball a little bit there on the Wildcat defense, but could not finish drives, threw an interception in the red zone, just a couple of turnover on downs there on the other side of the 40-yard line. And I think the lack of big playability they possessed, that they've had over the past few seasons, was kind of lacking last week. I'm not sure if that was just the King City defense or if just their offense in general is not going to be as explosive as we've seen in the past with them. We'll see. Maybe we'll get some more explosive plays out of North Andrew coming up down later in the year. But Jaden Baker is a really good athlete for him. Logan Hughes is a really physical downhill runner. And he could end up wearing defenses down later in the year so that 3 yards in a cloud of dust offenses starts choking out longer runs against some other teams. A tough matchup there week 1 for North Andrew. The game at Pattonsburg in week 3 will be a good barometer for both teams there, who I have ranked 5th and 8th in the rankings. That game will tell me a lot about both those teams and where I'm going to rank them going forward. Number 9, East Atchison. The Wolves' offense was really good in week 1. The defense, not so much. The two teams combined for 990 yards and 94 points. All is not lost for East Atchison, though. I know losing week 1 at home versus a fellow ranked opponent is not really what you want, especially when you were kind of the favorite going in. But they had time to turn it around. They still have talent in that roster. From what I've heard, they come out healthy, so that's good. But it starts with taking down Northwest Nottoway this week. It's a KNIM game of the week. I'll be there, so I'm not going to give a prediction. But East Atchison needs to win that game and get ready for week 3 in a showdown with South Holt Nottoway Holt. It's on the road. Bryson Bywater in the game versus Livingston led the ground attack with 166 yards and 3 touchdowns on 26 carries. Jake McEnany, he went 8 for 17 for 156 yards, a touchdown, and a pick through the air. Had another 64 yards and 18 carries, had 2 touchdowns on the ground. Freshman Kalen Merriweather, he was one of the starting backs this year. 36 yards on 11 carries and 1 catch for 35 yards. He's replacing Headland, who moved to the line this year for East Atchison, kind of like I heard they were going to do earlier. Gage McAdams, he's playing 4 catches, 63 yards, and a touchdown. Garrett Meyer caught 3 passes for 58 yards. So the offense is there for East Atchison. It's can they figure out that defense enough in time for that Week 3 matchup versus the Spartans of South Holt Nottoway Holt. And speaking of the Spartans, I think they're going to be pretty decent this year. I think that Week 1 game versus Worth County is just super tough to go over to Worth County and win. I know they did a couple years ago. That was a really good South Holt Nottoway Holt team. This team is not as good as that team, but I think they're still going to be decent this year. They're going to hover right around the border of being ranked or not ranked, I think, for me this year. Kind of depending on who they played the week before and how their season's going. They played with Worth County for about a quarter. Like I said earlier, they were only down 24-12 for the first quarter. They actually scored first. They were in that game. The lack of size and the lack of quality on the offensive line and the defensive line versus Worth County is going to be a problem because Worth County is really good every year on the lines, and they kind of just wore them out. Especially with Alarcon as their lead fullback, it's really hard to have someone meet him in the hole every single play, and it just sprung permanent behind him. So that's what wore the Spartans down that game. They need to beat Livingston to stay ranked, I think. I think if they fall to 0-2, no choice. Even if they're 2 quality losses to top 6 teams in the state, you're going to drop out of the rankings for a couple teams that are going to be 2-0, 1-1. So they need to win this week. It's going to be tough. Livingston's a really solid team. I don't know if they have an athlete on their roster as good as Mac Anderson, but we'll see what they have coming forward here. Should be a fun game. That's probably the best game of this week. You have 6 versus 10 down there in Ludlow. Should be a fun one. We'll get to that, picking that game here in a minute. A couple other teams I considered ranking. Norborn Hardin Central, we got a big win versus KC East. Christian in week 1. North Shelby, who fell behind early in Northwest Hughesville, but they came roaring back and ended up 45 in them later in that game. North Shelby's offense still humming. And then Oric, who in their first game at 8-man came out and just throttled Chillicothe. So that'll be interesting to see how those 3 teams kind of go. And Norborn Hardin Central plays both those teams in the coming weeks. So if they win both of those 3-0, they're going to be ranked. They just have to just keep winning and they'll get ranked here. North Shelby and Oric have a chance to elevate their status with quality wins as well. So that's what I have kind of explaining my power rankings. I want to give a shout out real quick to X106 and their new high school show. They do cover the 275 and the GRC. They're based out of Maryville, the campus in Northwest Missouri State. A couple of buddies of mine doing that show. It airs on Friday afternoons, but they're going to put their show on YouTube earlier in the week, so if you want to check that out, make sure you do it. I believe their Twitter account is X106 High School 1. Check them out. They're kind of a fun listen to. They're going to break down and give their opinions on 8-man football in the area and see how the teams are going. And I want to give them a thank you for sharing my rankings on their show. It means a lot to me to get my rankings out there, more than just straight up sports, but on other outlets as well. So we're going to go to the games that are going to happen this week and kind of see what's going to happen here. We're going to start here with Stanberry and Albany. Stanberry go on the road here for their first road game of the year. I think they take care of Albany. I think Albany is an improved team from last year, getting that Week 1 win 64 to, I think, 6 in Week 1 over an out-of-state school. I just think Stanberry's going to be too much for Albany. Stanberry gets that Week 2 win to go to 2-0 on the year. Pattonsburg, I think they take care of business at Bramer. Up next, Chillicothe and DeKalb. Chillicothe got throttled last week by Oric. DeKalb played with Rockport, played with them well for 4 quarters, really. Just couldn't muster enough offense to overcome Rockport on the road. I think DeKalb gets a win here. I think they beat Chillicothe at home, get to 1-1 on the year. I think the Tigers in this one over Chillicothe. Next game I have is King City hosting Northwest Hughesville. I think King City is just way too much for the Mustangs to handle. King City all over Northwest Hughesville. Up next, Stewartsville at Mountain City. Mountain City ranked number 4 in my rankings. Mountain City's going to take this one, I think, at home. I don't know if it's going to be relatively close even. I think Mountain City is just that good this year. And Stewartsville is a middle-of-the-pack 275 conference team at this point. And up next, one of the better games of the week. 2 teams I considered in the top 10, at least top 13 schools in the state right now, top half of the state. Oric and Norborn Hardin Central. I went back and forth on this one a little bit. I think Oric is going to get this win, actually. I think they're going to start making some noise and getting some momentum to try to get their feet underneath them more in 8-man football. I'm going to give the Bearcats the win here. Oric takes down the Aggies of Norborn Hardin Central. Should be a fun matchup, though. Not overly confident in that pick, because I really haven't seen a whole lot of either team, but I think Oric is going to get the win there. Up next, North Andrew, number 8 in the state, at St. Joe Christian. I think North Andrew gets back in the winning ways. They do not fall to 0-2. They go 1-1 to start the year, get a win at St. Joe Christian, who I think is a little bit down this year. After seeing what's happened in the Jamboree in Week 1, I think they're down a little bit in for a down year over in St. Joe. Up next, Greenfield versus Osceola. Greenfield, of course, leaving 8-man, going to 11-man. They're still playing Osceola, though, to fill schedule for each team. I think Greenfield gets the win. They're just too talented. They would have been a really good 8-man school this year with Bailey Baker at quarterback. They're going to win this game. I'm not sure if they're playing 8-man or 11-man rules, but either one, I think Greenfield wins it. Rockport, number 7 in the state, at Platte Valley. Platte Valley just doesn't have the horses this year. Rockport wins on the road in that one, and I think in pretty dominant fashion. Up next, the game of the week, South Holt, Nodaway Holt, number 10 in the state, at number 6, Southwest Livingston. And against my better judgment, I'm going with Livingston here at home with the win. Mac Anderson just a little bit too much for the Spartans. I think Livingston just gets the win here. Should be a fun matchup, though. I'll be checking this one on Twitter as it's going on. Hopefully someone's down there tweeting out scores. That should be a fun game to watch there. But I think Livingston gets the win in that one, and South Holt, Nodaway Holt falls in another game. But Livingston, they're a pretty good football team right now. I don't know if they're... It's going to be a shootout. I think both teams are going to score a lot of points. Kind of like the East Atchison and Southwest Livingston game. Should be a lot of fun in that one. Then after that, Worth County at Bedford on the road. Bedford did lose their game 1, first game of the year in Iowa. I think Worth County wins this one. I think it's pretty convincing. Worth County, I thought they were going to have a bigger drop-off from last year's team to this year's team. But with Caleb Parman at running back, Jacob New at quarterback, still have Alarcon there at fullback. Colton Wilmus is their center. He's a big man up in the middle, blocking for those guys. They're just going to be a battering ram all year long. I think Worth County is going to beat Bedford, and I can't wait for Week 9 when Worth County plays Stanberry. That's going to be one heck of a football game. I'm telling you that right now. And finally, last game, North Shelby playing Christian Life, Illinois. North Shelby, they're supposed to play Sacred Heart this week. Of course, Sacred Heart, no team this year. Coach Bass is able to get out and finally get a game scheduled here with an Illinois school. I think North Shelby gets the win here, improves to 2-0 on the year, and keeps opening people's eyes to the possibility of them getting ranked here in the near future. I think that's all I really got for you guys for Content this week. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. As always, follow at show_straight, at Man Football, and at Devin Albertson. Hope you guys enjoy all the stuff I put out there from Missouri 8-Man Football. As always, schools, thank you for posting your stats. Makes my job a little bit easier. Also, it's just good to see what everybody's doing in the state. I mean, it's always kind of fun to see what's going on there. But as we're kind of waiting here, the leading passers, the quarterback from Northwest Hughesville, I do not want to butcher his last name. So his first name is Connor, last name starts with a T. He's a senior. Threw for 250 yards last week and 4 touchdowns in a loss to North Shelby. Kane Rush from Stewartsville threw for 232 yards and 5 touchdowns in a win versus Northwest Nottoway. Mac Anderson, 213 yards and 3 touchdowns. Colin Breckenridge, 206 and 4 touchdowns. And finally, Jake McNamee rounds out the top 5, 156 yards and 1 touchdown for him. That's your top 5 passers in the state according to MaxPreps.com. Top 5 rushers in the state of 8-man. As I wait for this to load real quick, you have Cody Shannon from Norborn Hardin Central, had 201 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns to win versus KC East Christian. Mac Anderson, 193 yards and 2 touchdowns for Southwest Livingston. Caleb Parman, 171 yards and 3 touchdowns. He did that in just 15 carries. Number 4 is Bryson Bywater, 166 yards and 3 touchdowns for him. And Trey Schieber, 148 yards on just 5 carries, I remind you, and 2 touchdowns. That's your top 5 rushers in the state of Missouri for right now. So that's kind of what you see going on there. I'll get to receivers here too. So the top 5 in the state are there. Ryan Chamberlain from Northwest Hughesville, Nate Reith from Southwest Livingston, Kagan Barnett from King City, Wyatt Maddox from Southwest Livingston, and then Keaton Nelson from Stewartsville, ranging from 202 yards to 82 on the way down there. So that's kind of what you have for your top 5 receivers in the state. That's just kind of what we have going into week 2. I'm so glad football's back. Had a lot of fun covering North Andrew King City last week. Thank you to North Andrew for all the hospitality over there. It was fun calling the game. I'm heading to Burlington for this Friday, where I have East Atchison versus Northwest Nottoway. East Atchison is going to score a lot of points. We'll see if Northwest Nottoway keep up with him. Make sure you tune in to 95.9 FM for that game. I'll be on there pregame. We'll start around 6:45. We'll kick off at 7 o'clock. Should be a fun one over there in Burlington. That's all I really got. Make sure you tune in tomorrow for a weekend review. It's going to be, bear with me a bit on that show. I'm still trying to figure out what all I want to put into it and just kind of how I'm going to do that weekend review show and keep it relatively short so I'm not taking up too much time here. But thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Of course, always share the show, comment if you have any questions, anything you want me to talk about next week, any topics you want me to hit on for any of the shows. Let me know at Devin Albertson on Twitter or at Mo8Man Football or at show_straight. I'll get to any of those as you need them. So thank you and have a beautiful Thursday. I will see you on Friday. Devin Albertson out for Straight Up Sports.